Boys and girls, I hope you've all had a good week. As you may have heard, we are now able to meet back at church, which is great news, but we're not able to meet together for our Sunday school lessons as we would normally do. So we will continue to bring you these lessons online and just trust that they're a blessing to you. Our Bible story today is about a man called Jonah. Now, Jonah is a book found in the Old Testament, and Jonah was a prophet. Now, a prophet was God's messenger. God would give the message to Jonah, and he would go and deliver to the people and preach to them what God wanted them to hear. So one day God said to Jonah, I have a message for you to deliver. Take to the people of Nineveh. Now, the city of Nineveh was a powerful city, but the people there were wicked and they lived sinful lives. They fought and they were cruel, mean people. So Jonah really didn't want to go to the city of Nineveh. But God said, you go and you deliver a warning to these people, and you tell them that in 40 days, if they do not repent, stop living the lives they live in, I will destroy them and destroy their city. Jonah really did not want to go and take this message. So we read that Jonah, rather than go, let's imagine Nineveh is that way, Jonah went that way. He thought he was going to get as far as possible from the city of Nineveh. So he decides to run away. Now that's really quite a silly thing to think that he can run and hide from God. But that's what he tries to do. And you can see from this picture here, he runs to a seaport called Joppa. And can you see the ship in the background? Well, Jonah gets on to the ship and he settles down on the lower decks and he falls fast asleep. You can see in this picture here how he's sleeping at the bottom of the ship. Now, very soon after he's on the ship, there begins a storm, but a storm so fierce that the sailors on board have never seen anything as bad. The ship is rocking from side to side, the waves are tossing over the deck, and the winds are howling, and the sailors are really in fear of their lives. Now, these sailors, they don't worship the one true God, but they are trying to pray to all different things to try and stop the storm, but nothing is changing. They remember that Jonah is on the ship. So they go down to the deck of the ship and they shake Jonah, saying, Jonah, wake up, call upon your God and ask him to stop this storm. Well, Jonah realizes that God has sent this storm because of his disobedience. And he does not want to put these sailors' lives in danger. So he says to the sailors that I'm a prophet and I have disobeyed God and not taken the message I should have taken. This storm is my fault. Throw me over the side, throw me into the sea, and the storm will stop. Well, the sailors didn't really want to harm Jonah, but the storm continued and they realized that's what they needed to do. So they threw Jonah over the side of the ship and into the sea. Well, just like a miracle, the storm stopped. The wind eased and the waves calmed. Now, the wonderful thing we read is that these sailors then believed in the one true God. That's a wonderful thing to hear. They realized that this powerful God who had control over the sea and the storm and brought it was able to calm and stop it, and they trusted in God. Now, these sailors were safe upon the ship, but remember now, Jonah was deep in that sea and sinking. Now, in verse 17, chapter 1, the Bible tells us that God prepared a great fish. Now, you can see on this picture here, the great fish was a very large fish. And can you see Jonah splashing about in the sea? Well, this fish swam over to Jonah and he opened his jaws as wide as possible and gulp, there was Jonah. One swallow and he was in the belly of the whale. Wow, this was not the way that Jonah expected God to rescue him. He was in the belly of the whale. Now this whale did not bite him or chew him up as food. It was just one swallow and he was in his belly. The Bible tells us that Jonah spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. Can you imagine what it must have been like? I think it was probably dark, and I'm sure it was very smelly. Now can you see that Jonah is praying? Jonah is praying to God, and he first of all thanks God. He thanks him for saving his life out of and rescuing him from the sea. But he also says sorry to God. He realizes that his disobedience has caused him and maybe others a lot of trouble, and disobedience is never a good thing. So after the 3 days and 3 nights, God causes the fish to go over to the shore, and the Bible tells us that he vomits Jonah up. That means he opens his jaws and he spits him out onto the dry land, as you can see in this next picture. Now, for a second time, God speaks to Jonah and he says, "Go to Nineveh, take my message to the people of Nineveh." Now this time Jonah obeys and he goes to Nineveh. And he goes to Nineveh to the people, and you can see here that he is preaching the message that God has asked him to take to the people of Nineveh. Now can we remember what that message was? He was to tell the people that in 40 days, that if they did not repent from their sins, that God would destroy them and their city. But he also told them of God's love, and that God did not want to harm them, but God wanted them to stop living the way they were living. And that's what repent is. It isn't just saying sorry, it is stopping from living the way they were living. But we read that the people do listen to the message Jonah takes, much to Jonah's surprise that he doesn't think these people really deserve God's forgiveness. But the people do hear the message, and they do repent of their sins, and they trust in God. Now what a wonderful story that we read in Jonah today. And I know some of you have heard this story before, but it's great to be reminded about obedience, or in this case disobedience, because disobedience is sin and it always brings trouble. And you know, because our God is holy, that he has to punish sin. So God does not want us to have that punishment, but he's also gracious and merciful. That means he's loving and kind, and he's given us a way out that we can repent. We can also say sorry and turn away from our sin, so that we can live lives that honour God. So that's a wonderful story, and I hope that you've enjoyed today the story of Jonah. Now I wonder later on whether you can draw a large fish, or as the Bible tells us, a great fish. Now I've just drawn one, but I didn't have very big pieces of paper. I wonder if you can draw something bigger than this, just using some paper and drawing almost a circle shape for his head and body, and then his tail. And then maybe you could even draw a little Jonah sat in the belly of the great fish. I've just printed one off here of Jonah, and you could maybe draw or glue him on to the fish and see him inside the belly of the fish. It's been wonderful once again to bring you this lesson, and I do trust that we can meet together very soon. God bless.